Last year at Money in the Bank, John Cena made it very clear that London was going to be getting a WrestleMania at some point in the future. They said it without actually saying it because there's no way that they have him come out there in the middle of a pay-per-view to give a rah-rah speech about a UK Mania and then not eventually deliver one. WWE took one giant leap forward this week towards that very thing when Paul Levesque and Nick Khan met with Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London. Another Khan. Too many Khans. Levesque and Khan, they flew over to meet with the mayor at City Hall to discuss the possibility of bringing a WrestleMania to London. And the mayor tweeted, "Delighted to have met with Paul Triple H Levesque and WWE President Nick Khan to discuss making London WrestleMania's first international destination. The meeting was really productive. Talks will continue about how we can turn our ambition into a reality." This follows a tweet that the mayor had posted back on April 25th, where he said, "London is already the sporting capital of the world. If I am re-elected next Thursday, we will go even further. We will look to bring WrestleMania, the Super Bowl, and the NBA to London and put together another bid for the 2040 Olympics." To which Triple H replied, "Let's talk." So they actually follow through on that. And the belief is that both London and Saudi Arabia will be making bids at some point to host the first WrestleMania ever outside of North America. We've had a couple in Canada, but nothing outside of North America. So who's going to get it first? We'll find out. The last time WWE brought one of its major events to London, the only time one of the big three was ever held there, was SummerSlam in 1992. That was at the old Wembley Stadium, which has since been demolished. That show legitimately had, I think, just under 80,000 fans, which was pretty amazing considering business for WWE was just in the tubes that year. But they were always very popular in the UK and other parts of Europe, and that's why they would run there. They would do tours in like all over the place, not just UK, but France and Germany and Italy and all these different places. And you'd see some of these matches would pop up on like old Coliseum videos. They were always very popular in that part of the world, even if business was down here in the States. And the first time you do anything, there's always going to be a novelty aspect to it. I mean, that's why AEW was able to sell 81,000 tickets for Wembley last year for All In. The turnstile count of actual fans there was 72,000, but they used the sold number of 81,000, which I think is the number that Will Ospreay tattooed on his body. So for his sake, we'll go with 81,000. This year, AEW is tracking a little more than half that, which is still a big crowd. I mean, that's, look, 45,000, 50,000, nothing to sneeze at. As of a week ago, they were at 42,000 tickets sold. Now, are they going to sell 8,000 tickets in 4 weeks? That seems very unlikely. But they should end up close to 50K by showtime because the novelty from last year just isn't there anymore. They were never going to do anywhere close to 81K for this year's All In. The novelty of WrestleMania coming to London for the first time, and you factor in as hot as WWE is right now, and we don't know when this is going to take place, so who's to say WWE is going to still be this hot in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now? But I don't think they're going to have any problem filling up that stadium each night. And you know that if they run Wembley, they are going to want to blow AEW out of the water because there is no way that if they run Wembley Stadium, that they're going to cite a number lower than what AEW claimed. There is no way, whether it's legitimate or not. And you know how they inflate these WrestleMania numbers. Even in the Paul Levesque era, they're not against inflating these numbers. There is not a chance in hell that they're going to let AEW lay claim to the highest attended wrestling event ever. So if they run Wembley, and they didn't say anything about Wembley specifically, but if they run Wembley, then believe me, that claim is no longer going to be valid. The only thing with Wembley, and my UK folks can chime in here and let me know if there's any other considerations here, maybe other sports that might use the stadium that time of year. But I believe Wembley only has a partially retractable roof. And it doesn't cover, it might cover the majority of the stadium, but not maybe the ends, I think. It doesn't cover the entire stadium. And there's a big difference, with AEW running Wembley in August and WWE running, let's say, in April, or maybe even if they pushed it back to early May. Big difference between those two as far as the weather is concerned. Now, it hasn't stopped them from running outdoors before, but in London, I would think that rain would be more of a risk. It's like playing Russian roulette. I wouldn't mind a 1 o'clock Eastern WrestleMania. You see, I miss the old 4 p.m. shows they used to do. I remember WrestleMania 10 starting at 4 p.m. And that was the last time they ever did that. But it would mean no dinner for me, but it would still be nice to not have to scream into the wee hours of the night. So just on a personal level, I don't have any issue with that. The reason they never ran a WrestleMania in the UK before primarily was the time zone difference. You know, the time zone and the expense involved. It's a very expensive endeavor. But now they're running more international shows than ever before. And they air all of their events on Peacock. You know, they run 2 Saudi shows every single year that start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast. They ran an Elimination Chamber show this year that started at 5 o'clock in the morning. All right, all of those barriers and obstacles that existed before, they no longer apply. It's a new world now, especially if you have these cities bidding for these events, right? Back then, they didn't bid for these events. They booked the venue and they ran the venue, right? They probably weren't getting any tax breaks. They weren't getting any real incentives back then. They took on a lot of that expense. That's one of the reasons why they wouldn't do it. Even though that's, 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium, you would think, holy shit, they should go back there every year. That was 1992. They haven't gone back for a major show. Why? Right? Those obstacles no longer apply. Economically, they would not have the same concerns that they would have had 10 or 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So it makes sense to do it, right? And you see how rabid the fan base is there. It would make for an incredible atmosphere. I think they'll make a bid and they'll get the deal done, because they would not be so public about this if they didn't think there was a really good chance of this happening. The question is when. What is the earliest that, I could see them doing it? If, let's say, in the next, 6 months, we find out that the deal is done, right? Vegas is locked in for 2025. We already know that. They also just signed that deal to bring WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble and SummerSlam to Indianapolis, right? Spread out over the next 8 years. That was a first-of-its-kind deal. Don't be surprised if they work out something similar for London also, where they bring more than just WrestleMania to London. I will point out to you that next year's SummerSlam location still has not been announced. I'm just saying. Minneapolis is getting it in 2026, but the location for 2025 is still TBD. Right? This is what TKO is interested in doing. This is what Nick Khan is looking for. He's looking to make more deals like that for more than just WrestleMania. But for Indianapolis, they haven't said when they're actually getting it. 2026 would be the earliest. I remember the president of the Tennessee Titans claimed a while back that they had a verbal commitment from WWE to bring WrestleMania there in 2027 to be the first event at their new stadium that they just broke ground on earlier this year. But a verbal commitment is very different from an actual announcement. Verbal commitment doesn't mean shit. The Minnesota Vikings were once talking about their new stadium and they let it slip that WrestleMania was coming. You know when that was? 9 years ago. There still has never been a WrestleMania in Minnesota, and there probably never will be. That's why they gave them a 2-night SummerSlam in 2026. That was a consolation prize. But let's say Nashville does get WrestleMania in 2027, right? And then London is either the year before or the year after. That's what I would think. But keep your eye on SummerSlam next year. 33 years later, SummerSlam returns to London. It could happen. That would really fuck over AEW. Can you imagine? Tony Khan announces, the show next month goes off without a hitch, and then we get the announcement that night that All In is coming back again next year for Wembley. And then we get the announcement not long after that WWE is running SummerSlam in the same building, the same stadium, 3 weeks earlier in 2025. Tony will claim a bomb threat was called in and he'll have to move the show somewhere else like WrestleMania 7. Because I think if wrestling fans in the UK had the choice between 2 shows, you can only go to one, right? It's very expensive, these shows. So you got to choose one or the other. If they could only afford one, they're not going to All In. Especially if maybe they went to the first two. But now you have SummerSlam coming back there for the first time in 30 years. I mean, what do you think they're going to choose? You don't think WWE would do it? I know they would. They would do it with a smile on their face.